Born Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol on March 31st, 1809, Gogol was a Russian author of Ukrainian descent. Despite descending from Ukraine, his work belongs to the tradition of Russian literature. He was even called the father of modern Russian realism. Best known for his novels such as Taras Bulba and Dead Souls, he is also credited as short story author and playwright. His short stories, well renowned throughout the world with their scrupulous and scathing realism, ethical criticism as well as philosophical depth, remain as some of the most important works of world literature. His early work started in the Cossack village of Sorochinsky, now known as Velky Sarakasky in Ukraine. When Gogol was 15 years old, his father, who was an amateur squire and playwright, he died. In 1820, Gogol started attending a school of higher art in Nizhyn, where he remained until 1828. It was there where he began writing. Among his schoolmates, he was often made fun of, being referred to as a mysterious dwarf. He had made very few lasting friendships. Very early, he developed a dark and secretive disposition. Alongside his disposition, he also picked up a talent to mimic, which would later make him a matchless reader of his own works and induce him to toy with the idea of becoming an actor. Upon leaving school in 1829, he had made his way to Petersburg. He brought with him a romantic poem of German idyllic life. At his own expense, he published the poem Hans Kierkegaarden under the name V. Elov. The magazines he sent it to almost universally denied it. As a result, he bought every copy he could and destroyed them, swearing to never write poetry again. In 1831, he brought out the first volume of his Ukrainian stories, Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka, which followed with immediate success. He followed it into 1832 with a second volume, and in 1835 by 2 volumes of stories entitled Mirgorod, as well as 2 volumes of miscellaneous prose entitled Arabiscus. His fictional story Taras Bulba, based on the history of Ukraine Cossacks, sparked a sudden interest in Ukrainian history. He had even attempted to be appointed as a historian, but was marked unqualified by a Kievan bureaucrat. In 1834, Gogol was made professor of medieval history at the University of St. Petersburg. But he wasn't very successful as a teacher. He missed 2 out of 3 lectures, and when he did appear, he muttered unintelligibly through his teeth. At the final examination, he sat in utter silence with a black handkerchief wrapped around his head, simulating a toothache. This academic venture proved a failure, and he resigned his chair in 1835. After he resigned, he then went swimming in the sea of literature once again. Then in 1836, he wrote the comedy The Government Inspector. A violent satire on Russian provincial bureaucracy was able to be staged thanks only to personal intervention by Nicholas I, the Russian emperor during 1825 to 1855. Then from 1836 to 1848, he lived abroad, traveling throughout Germany and Switzerland. Gogol spent the winter of 1836 in Paris, where he spent time among many Russian and Polish exiles. There he met many Polish poets and became influenced by them. He eventually settled in Rome. The death of Alexander Pushkin had produced a strong impression on Gogol. His principal work following Pushkin's death was the satirical epic Dead Souls. In 1841, the first part of Dead Souls was ready, and Gogol took it to Russia to supervise its printing. It appeared in Moscow in 1842 under the title The Adventures of Chikikov. The book instantly established his reputation as the greatest prose writer in the language.
You're simply the best, better than all the rest.
He returned to Russia and passed his last years in relentless movement throughout the country. He then became very depressed. On the night of February 24th, 1842, he burned some of his manuscripts which contained most of the second part of Dead Souls. He explained this as a mistake, a practical joke played on him by the devil. Soon thereafter, he took to bed, refused all food, and died in great pain 9 days later. Gogol was buried at the Danilov Monastery. In 1931, Moscow authorities decided to demolish the monastery and had his remains transferred to some other place. That is Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol.